Hello everyone! Today we're going to cover gender in Spanish grammar and how gender affects nouns and adjectives, as well as definite and indefinite articles. In this one, we're going to do all of these. So I hope you enjoy, and I hope that this makes it clearer for you, because gender can confuse a lot of English speakers. So in this lesson, we will cover definite articles and nouns, definite articles, nouns, and adjectives, and the rules of agreement. So first we have the article the. This is a definite article that exists in English, but in Spanish, there are actually 4 different versions of the definite article the. First, we have el. El is masculine singular, and it's a definite article for the. This means the. In Spanish, they separate things by gender. So there are masculine articles, and there are also feminine articles. But there are also singular articles, and there are plural articles. Henceforth, you have 4 different articles for the same word, the. El is a masculine singular article. It is definite, and it means the. La is the feminine singular definite article. Whoop! La is a feminine singular definite article, and this is used for feminine nouns. Next we have los. Los is the masculine plural definite article. This is used for masculine plural nouns. Las is the feminine plural definite article, and this will be used with feminine plural nouns. Definite articles and nouns. El chico. El chico means the boy, more specifically the little boy, but we're just going to say the boy for now. The boy. Chico is a masculine singular noun. We know that because it ends in O, and even though this isn't an absolute, most of the time, masculine singular nouns end in O. But we know for sure that Chico is absolutely masculine because of its article el. It's the article that tells us the definite gender of the noun. El chico, masculine singular, definite article paired with a masculine noun. La chica, same thing. La chica. Chica ends in A, and most feminine nouns have a tendency to end in A. But also, we know for sure that this is absolutely a feminine noun because its article is la, and la is the article for feminine singular nouns. The girl. Next, we have the plural, los chicos. Los chicos is masculine plural. Chicos ends in os, and most masculine plural nouns in Spanish end in os. But we know for sure, without a doubt, that this is masculine plural because los is in front of it, and this is masculine plural article for the. Los. Los chicos, the boys, or the little boys. Las chicas. This is feminine plural. This is paired with a definite article and noun, and the definite article for this one is las. Las chicas. Chicas ends in as, which is a common tendency for feminine plural nouns. But we know for sure without a doubt that this is feminine plural because of its article las. The girls, the little girls. So we have el chico, the boy, la chica, the girl, los chicos, the boys, las chicas, the girls. There are 4 different grammatical formats for the definite article the in the Spanish language. This is because all Spanish definite articles and nouns have gender. The spelling also changes when the definite articles are plural. Therefore, there are 4 different versions of the based on gender and plurality of the noun. Gender is random. There is no specific reason why certain objects are masculine or feminine. No matter what gender people are, they can own objects with different genders. The owner of the object does not change the object's gender. For example, a male can own a feminine object, and a female can own a male object. However, when people describe themselves, they must have the adjectives that agree with their gender. This means that if I say that I'm angry, enojada, I have to say estoy enojada with an A. But if a man describes himself as being angry, he will describe himself as being enojado, with an O at the end. And even though we are feeling the same emotion, because I'm female, I have to say estoy enojada, the man has to say estoy enojado. When people describe objects with adjectives, they must also agree the gender of the described object. This is referring to if you said, for example, the skirt is black, la falda negra. Well, la falda is feminine. Negro means black, but that's masculine singular. We need to change this to feminine singular so that it'll agree with the femininity of la falda, and negro becomes negra. Adjectives usually come after the noun in Spanish versus English, where adjectives usually come before. Sometimes adjectives do come before the noun in Spanish, but that is not so common. So here we go. What are we to do? Masculine singular nouns and adjectives. Nouns that are masculine singular usually end in O. When describing masculine singular nouns, the corresponding adjectives will remain unchanged and stay as the default masculine singular O ending to agree with the gender and singularity of the masculine noun. El chico alto, the tall boy, or the boy tall. Literally, you are saying this in what in English would be considered to be backwards format grammatically. We're saying the boy tall, and we're saying the adjective after the noun because that is the Spanish grammar format. That is correct for Spanish, but we will translate it in English as the tall boy because our grammar format says adjectives go in the front, not after. So here are a couple examples. El chico, the little boy. El muchacho, the older, teenage boy. El abuelo, the grandfather. El esposo, the spouse or husband. El chico alto, the tall little boy. El muchacho bajo, the short, older teenage boy. El abuelo bonito, the beautiful grandfather. El esposo feo, the ugly spouse or the ugly husband. Feminine singular nouns and adjectives are nouns that are feminine singular, usually end in A. When describing feminine singular nouns, the corresponding adjectives will change from the default masculine singular O to a feminine singular A, ending to agree with the gender and singularity of the feminine noun. La chica alta, the tall girl, or the girl tall. So, when an adjective is added to a noun that ends in A, the adjective will usually change to an A to make it feminine to agree with the feminine noun. So, alto becomes alta, bajo becomes baja, bonito becomes bonita, and feo becomes fea. So here are some examples. La chica, the little girl. La muchacha, the older teenage girl. La abuela, the grandmother. La esposa, the spouse or the wife. La chica alta, the tall little girl. La muchacha baja, the short, older teenage girl. La abuela bonita, the beautiful grandmother. And la esposa fea, the ugly spouse or the ugly wife. Now we are moving on to plural. Nouns that are masculine singular usually end in OS. When describing masculine plural nouns, the corresponding adjectives will change from the default masculine singular O to a masculine plural OS, ending to agree with gender and the plurality of the masculine noun. Los chicos altos, the tall boys or the boys talls. When an adjective is added to a noun that ends in os, the adjective will usually change to an os to make it masculine plural to agree with the masculine plural noun. Alto becomes altos, bajo becomes bajos, bonito becomes bonitos, and feo becomes feos. Masculine plural nouns adjectives. Technical difficulty, sorry. Los chicos is the little boys. Los muchachos is the older teenage boys. Los abuelos is the grandfathers. Los esposos is the spouses or the husbands. And los chicos, ay Dios. Okay, wait. Sorry. Los chicos altos is the tall little boys. Los muchachos bajos is the short, older teenage boys. Los abuelos bonitos is the beautiful grandfathers. Los esposos feos is the ugly spouses or the ugly husbands. But I need to tell you something important about masculine singular. Masculine singular is somewhat of a default for plurality. And I'll explain what I mean by that. What I mean by that is instead of saying the feminine plural and the masculine plural, it's unnecessary to do that in Spanish because it is understood that if you use the masculine plural term, that's standing in place for a masculine plural and or a mixed group of people. For example, if you look at los abuelos, yes, we know that los abuelos means the grandfathers, but it also means the grandparents. Los abuelos will stand in place for grandfathers and grandmothers if need be. It depends how you use it. Los muchachos is the same. If you say los muchachos, that can stand in place for the teenage and older girls and boys. Los chicos, same thing. The little girls and boys. And los esposos, spouses is a word in English that is already genderless, so I don't need to explain that. If you say spouse, we already understand that spouse can be male or spouse can be female, and if you say spouses, it could mean the husbands, it could mean the wives, or it could mean the wives and the husbands. However, in this case, it will never just mean the wives, and I will explain why. For feminine plural, we know that this is exclusively female term. This is what you use if it's all girls. Only. No men allowed. So nouns that are feminine singular usually end in as. When describing feminine plural nouns, the corresponding adjectives will change from the default masculine O to a feminine plural as, ending to agree with the gender and the plurality of the feminine noun. Las chicas altas, the tall girls or the girls talls. Feminine plural definite article, noun, and adjective. This is agreeing. The whole gender is agreeing. So when an adjective is added to a noun that ends in as, the adjective will usually change to an as to make it feminine plural to agree with the feminine plural noun. Alto becomes altas, bajo becomes bajas, bonito becomes bonitas, and feo becomes feas. So feminine plural nouns and adjectives. Here are the nouns. Las chicas, the little girls. Las muchachas, the older teenage girls. Las abuelas, the grandmothers, specifically and exclusively. Las esposas, the female spouses or the wives, specifically and exclusively. Las chicas altas, the older, oh, I'm sorry, excuse me, the tall little girls. Las muchachas bajas, the short, older teenage girls. Las abuelas bonitas, the beautiful grandmothers, exclusively and specifically. And las esposas feas, the ugly spouses, specifically female, or the ugly wives. So check yourself before you wreck yourself. We need to make sure that when we're making these phrases, that our gender agrees all across the board. We need to make sure that our article is the correct gender, our noun is the correct gender, and our adjective is the correct gender, and they are all the same gender. Checking agreement between articles and nouns. El chico, for example, is the article masculine singular? Sí. Is the noun masculine singular? Sí. Gender and singularity agreement achieved. Buen trabajo. Good work. I hope that this PowerPoint was helpful to you all, and I hope that gender is a little bit easier to understand in Spanish now. Just remember that when you're making your phrases, that everything must agree. And never forget to check your gender, because it is the sort of thing that does matter. Some people will shrug it off and they'll just say, I'll just say things like la falda negro or estoy enojado when you're a woman. Well, to be honest, these kind of things are important to the language, so don't disregard it, and people will correct you. So please make sure to check yourself before you wreck yourself, and make sure that you study your Spanish grammar, and make sure that you study and keep correct the gender between your nouns, your articles, and your adjectives. Have a wonderful evening.